What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. What a quarterfinal set of games for the women's side of the Olympics. You go from probably your goal of the tournament to win the first game in stoppage time for the U.S., to penalty shootout, to Brazil hanging on to a 1-0 lead against host France with Marta's international career hanging in the balance. Back to back to back to back, nonstop action on the women's side. So that is where I'm going to start, and specifically with the U.S. women's national team advancing to the semifinals. As I mentioned, it is a Trinity Rodman golazo, basically right as stop of halftime for extra time is happening. That one goal is ultimately enough. No, it was not the spectacular performance. No, the attack did not look anywhere as fluid as it had in previous games, and that is okay. I talk about this pretty consistently, and it's worth bringing up again here. Teams that win knockout tournaments do not always look spectacular every step of the way. There is almost always one or two games where you just have to find a way to survive. Whether it's because you get a red card, or you give up a really weird, bizarre goal, or your attack just isn't clicking, or you have an injury, or you hit the crossbar 2 times. Whatever it might be. You don't just comprehensively outplay teams game after game after game to win a tournament. Sometimes you just have to survive, and that's okay. The question becomes, coming out of this game, was this just one of those games the U.S. has to survive to be able to win a gold medal? Or is this a sign of more issues to come? Because the attack was not clicking. The front three did not have good games. They didn't get a lot of service, and they weren't particularly connected. They were sort of isolated. Trinity Rodman had one ball played out to her in space and had an awful touch that completely ruined that opportunity. Ultimately, she comes up with the moment of brilliance that decides the game. But that was about all you got out of your front three. So the next part of this is distinguishing it from the World Cup. Let's look in totality at what this team has done so far. And this is the other part of why I'm not concerned about this result at all. It looked like this every game at the World Cup. The best performance, they didn't even score a goal. And then they lost a penalty shootout to Sweden. And it was even worse before that. That is when it becomes a concern and a problem, is when the attack just isn't there. The team just is not playing well consistently. Not, there's one bad game. That is the difference here. This has been the exception rather than the norm. Now, like I said, you go do the same thing in the semifinal. Okay, we're having a little bit of a different feel and perspective on everything. But Japan was playing in a really low block. That was clearly the game plan. That is a very disciplined, intelligent team you are facing. I'm just not worried about this. You got to just keep going until you find a way. Oh, and the other part of this too, by the way, it's not like Japan were creating chances either. If they are finding ways to really hurt you on the counter and creating the better opportunities, even if they are few and far between, that's also an issue. But that's really, yes, Japan had a chance here or there, but that wasn't really the story of this game either. It was a lot of the U.S. having the ball and not being able to do anything particularly threatening with it. And that happens sometimes. The big talking point coming out of this game, because it wasn't pretty, was the substitutions, or more specifically, the lack thereof, and the lack of changes in the lineup. A couple parts to this conversation as well. The time to make the switches, the time to rest players, the time to rotate your lineup was the Australia game. You knew you were through. You had the opportunity to do some experimenting. It's the same general point I made on the men's side at the World Cup, when Berhalter didn't rotate during the England game, when you knew that the third one was going to be the really important one, you knew that this Australia game didn't have all that much significance to it. You're going to play a really good team in the quarterfinals. It's not like you can really avoid a tough game or anything. I mean, it's the Olympics. There are 12 teams there. And you just saw how evenly balanced those quarterfinals were. There were nothing between any of these teams. I mean, the only team that had a multi-goal lead was Colombia against the best team in the world, and they didn't even win. They're home. So that was the opportunity to do so. If you feel like Emma Hayes should have, that is valid. Emma Hayes does not believe for a second that she should have made any kind of changes. And her philosophy and her viewpoint on this is also valid. That she needs these players on the field, building chemistry, understanding, and being able to experiment and implement what she wants as much as possible. There's validity to that too. This is really, more than anything else, a conversation about how ridiculous it is that there are 18 player rosters here. I have no problem with what Emma Hayes did. Maybe it's the right decision. Maybe it's the wrong decision. We don't know. Because you can play all kinds of what ifs on either side. Do they even win this game if they make the subs? If they lose in the semis, do they win in the semis if they made the subs? You can kind of play both sides of the argument there. There are valid reasons why Emma Hayes is handling this the way she is. There are also valid reasons to question the decisions that she has made and the philosophy that she has taken. The other thing I want to throw into this conversation, though, it's really easier to sit there and say, you got to make subs. You can't keep running these same players out there and running them into the ground. They were clearly exhausted. And certainly the U.S. is not the only team facing this problem. Now, the U.S. has made fewer subs than just about everybody else. So they've got more mileage, more wear and tear, more minutes in this tournament for those key players. But think about the options on the bench in this game. Because you had your holding midfielder suspended, you had your starting center back injured and unavailable. The bench was your backup goalkeeper, Lynn Williams, who came into the game and has scored in this tournament, obviously. 2 outside backs, neither of whom have been consistently in the U.S. picture. Now, that's not necessarily Jenna Neiswanger's fault, if you want to use that word. She's, a year and a half into her professional career. But she doesn't have any international experience. Jaden Shaw, who hasn't played a minute in this tournament because of injury. And Emily Sams, who has 0 caps and is a center back. It's not like you have, and I'm just kind of picking some names here, but, Alex Morgan, Midge Purse, who's obviously injured and not, obviously they're both not on this roster, but just some of these players who have been around, have been Andy Sullivan, whatever names you want to go to here. Those players are not here. Partially because there's only 18 spots on the roster and you have to go for roster flexibility, and partially because Emma Hayes is really trying to transition to the next group. But the combination of the roster Emma Hayes chose, the fact that it's only 18, and the fact that the U.S. is, burning all of the alternates because all of a sudden Katerina Macario can't come, so Lynn Williams is now on the squad, and Emily Sams is now in your lineup instead of being an alternate because you've got an injury at center back, and you can't replace Sam Coffey because she's suspended. All of this created a situation where I was sitting there looking at the bench going, what do you want Emma Hayes to do? Yeah, she could have brought Lynn Williams on earlier. Sure. And, maybe she could have turned to Jaden Shaw. Jaden Shaw also might just not have been healthy enough to play in this game. Who knows? She was in the squad, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she was actually able to play and that Emma Hayes intentionally didn't bring her onto the field. What I am confident in saying is that, maybe you can make an argument for Jane Shaw. Maybe. But I'm fairly confident that none of the players that would have come onto the field as substitutes are scoring the goal that Trinity Rodman scored. Again, that is not the only point in making the substitutions. Of course, it's also to take some of the workload off, to get fresh legs out there. I get all that. I'm just collectively, I'm not convinced Emma Hayes got this all right, but she certainly didn't get this all wrong. She trusted her 11, and ultimately she got the goal. What kind of price they have to pay heading into the semifinals, we'll see. It probably helps that they had the first game here so that they get at least a little bit more rest. They're obviously also playing the first game in the semis. The other part of this too, not only the Olympic roster, but the Olympic schedule. Not getting an extra day or two like you do at the World Cup. All of it is creating this situation where I just don't feel like you can win. So I'm not going to get on Emma Hayes for this. Did she make every right decision? Probably not. We also don't know that yet. And there are reasons why she's doing what she's doing. And it's paying off at least to a certain extent. So the context of what the alternative, it's easy to just go say you got to use your subs. The next step to that, though, to have a real conversation is to say, okay, what were the alternatives? Right? It's the same idea of, okay, fire that coach. Well, who are you bringing in that's better? Get rid of that player. What is your other option? And there are a confluence of things that have come together to leave Emma Hayes with some not so ideal options. And she's choosing to stick with her 11 as much as she possibly can, at least in part because of that, or as a result of it. So I'm just not super concerned about all of this. I'm not super concerned about Emma Hayes' decision making. You're getting exactly what you expected out of her, and to me that's a good thing and that's a compliment. They had to go find a way to win a game. They found a way to win it. They weren't good. They weren't terrible either. It just wasn't a good game in attack. But defensively, they were rocks out. So now you get to go and have an opportunity to go play for a medal here, or at least to put yourself in the gold medal game, or win one of these next two and walk away with a medal. Obviously, gold medal is still up there for grabs. So U.S. women's national team advances. Real quick, as the men's national team bows out of the Olympics in the quarterfinal stage, 4-0 loss to Morocco. Scoreline a bit deceptive because it really kind of piled on at the end. Not that the U.S. was good in this game at all, but it was closer than 4-0 until everything kind of fell apart at the end. Getting to these kind of tournaments, getting to the Youth World Cups is crucial. And it's especially important for a country that needs challenges outside of its region. Right? Okay, Canada is certainly a challenging opponent. Mexico has not really challenged the U.S. recently. The next step for this team is what can you do outside of CONCACAF, right? We talk about that all the time. Okay, so part of that is getting all of the players in your youth pipeline experience playing against European teams, playing against South American teams, experience of what it's like to play in a World Cup, to play in an Olympics, to prepare for one opponent after the other, to get to a knockout stage and understand how to navigate that. You just need to give as many players as possible, as many opportunities as possible, so that when you are picking a team for, say, the 2026 World Cup, you've got as many options and as much experience as you could possibly have. Because this tournament is weird. The roster rules are weird. There's nothing to take away from it because it's this isolated, insulated thing. All you can do is evaluate what happened in the tournament because this says nothing about the full national team squad. Because Walker Zimmerman and Miles Robinson are borderline guys. Jordy Mihailovic is out of the picture and probably not getting back in. This is not the U.S. men's national team that's going to a World Cup. Most of these guys are not going to be on the 2026 team. So you've got to just take this tournament for what it is. It's crucial to qualify. The U.S. had not been doing that. The last time the U.S. had gotten out of a group was 2000. The goal on the youth development side of things is twofold. It's the experience that I've already mentioned, and then it's progress, right? You want to see more and more positive things happening. You want to see steps being taken where you feel like both on the international side and at the club level, you are moving up in terms of the players you're producing and the results that those players are then generating. This was a huge step in the right direction. The U.S. had not been qualifying for this tournament. I believe this is only the second time they've qualified since 2000. They got out of the group for the first time since 2000. And if Kevin Paredes, who had a really good tournament and is obviously still a young player, plenty of opportunity to prove himself at the club level, if he builds off of this and kind of uses it as a springboard to become a real factor heading into 2026, fantastic. There's absolutely an opportunity for that to happen. That's not what this is about, though, because you just can't control that. This is not going to be the singular reason why or why not. Maybe it gives him a slight leg up, gives him some confidence, but he's not making the World Cup squad because of what he did in the Olympics. That's the added bonus. It's about, do you feel like there was improvement, that there's things are headed in a good direction? And are you showing up in the first place and giving players these kind of opportunities and learning experiences? And the answer to all of that coming out of this Olympics was yes. Doesn't matter about the end result. Doesn't matter that they walked away without medaling. This was an absolute success. Now, this becomes the baseline, and then you've got to build on it moving forward. But you had to raise the baseline first. Raise the bar. And that's what this team did. They should be absolutely proud of that. And feel like, yes, you're disappointed you didn't go farther, but also you did something significant here. And ultimately, that's the first step, is you got to show up and you got to show some kind of, have some positive takeaways. And this team was able to do that. That is all for the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time.